Okay, let's see if we can get it going this time. What's wrong with the camera? Something's going wrong. Oh, good. It's come good. Wow. Guys, I think they stopped that last one because it was on about Israel's war. So I'm not going to do that. Because it just didn't make any sense that it was stopping. Oh, come on. Bloody remote always plays up when I go live.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome once again to the Midnight Ride.
Hi, Diane.
Tonight,
Hi, Jeremiah. Good to
John
see you
Powers
guys.
and I are going to be bringing you a presentation entitled The Hellfire Club, Satan's Change Agents. We're going to be looking at the fascinating history of the Hellfire Club, and we're going to be looking at how Satan uses secret societies to transform and change the world we're living in. And the best thing about this broadcast is you're not going to have to wait very long for it, because it all starts right now, because we're now
Live.
What's up, guys? Glad to be here in the Pearson Barn with David once again. And this show tonight is going to be amazing. And this is going to give us insight into really how a lot of the powers that work that gathered the power and how they form together, and just
that's why it's not focusing properly now.
There's no mistaking where a lot of this.
Actually, it's John Pounders. He's always glowing.
Let us know where you guys are from in the chat. Let us know what you guys got going on, and we will be right back after a word from our sponsors. Many mainstream companies put dangerous chemicals in their products that contribute to disease and disability. This is why it's so important that we take care in the products that we consume. The skin is the largest organ in your body, and it is the covering to your temple.
Wow,
our sponsor tonight is Sugar and Spice Soap Company. They create all natural and biblically clean soaps and beauty products. They even have a soap for Midnight Ride listeners. Use coupon code NYSTV to receive 10% off all your purchases. Link in the description. If this is true, then our country is in a lot of trouble.
We would have these trips, these special trips.
But he said my daddy takes the bodies to the grocery store and he grinds them up and puts it in the hamburger, and nobody ever knows it.
How can kids 6, 8, 10 years old be describing rituals that come from a book like the Book of the Dead? It's hard to get your mind around people being capable of this kind of evil.
And we are back tonight on Now You See TV. And if you guys are interested in any of those sponsorships, go down in the link below and you'll see links there. And so make sure to check that stuff out. Also, we got other shows coming up this week. Breaking Babylon. David, you guys have some shows coming up here. Sunday night live shows coming up as well. What is that going to be about?
It's going to be the final episode of the Atlantis trilogy that Brian Reese and I have done on our FOJC Radio Rumble channel. So that will be on Sunday night, 8 p.m. on FOJC Rumble channel. So,
and guys, this is 11 days ago, so it's not very old.
Join us for that. It'll be a blessing for you. I guarantee it.
Very good. So, David, tonight the topic, the Hellfire Club. It's been made pretty popular recently, and I'm not 100% sure the root of the popularity. I've been seeing people wearing these shirts. all over the place that say Hellfire Club on it. And I think it was made popular, if I'm remembering correct, there was a character on Netflix on the series, my goodness, Stranger Things, that was wearing the shirt, and it might be a band, I have no idea, but it's definitely been a popular concept lately. And on
Hey, Phil, good to see you, mate.
top of that, it's about those weird let's do it.
Let's ride. Let's ride. And tonight we're going to be, it's shocking, the terrific evil that many of our leaders and founding fathers were involved in, just horrific evil. But it was an evil genius. And we're going to be looking at how these people used this hellfire and other groups like it to transform society. There was a method to their evil, there certainly was. And this book, The Aquarian Conspiracy, this was written in the 1980s. And in the early 1980s, I was one of the first to speak out against the New Age movement as it really began to explode in the early 80s. And this book was like a handbook for the New Age movement. And, a lot of people say, boy, you're a conspiracy theorist. Well, this laid out that indeed there was a conspiracy, and it was a handbook on how to disseminate New Age ideas to transform society, which are just basically satanic ideas. But in this book that came out in 1980, on page 24, it says there are legions of conspirators.
Hey, good to see
They are
you.
in corporations, universities, and hospitals, on the faculties of public schools. Oh, yeah. In universities, factories, and doctors' offices, and state and federal agencies, on city councils, and the White House staff. They have coalesced into small groups in every town and institution. They have formed what one called national non-organizations. Some conspirators are keenly aware of the national, even international scope of the movement, and are active in linking others. They are at once antenna and transmitters, both listening and communicating. They amplify the activities of the conspiracy by networking and pamphleteering, articulating the new options through books, lectures, school curricula, even congressional hearings and national media. Their goal is social transformation. And this is certainly, they have done well. I remember the world as it was in 1980 was a far cry from the world that we live in now. There are things now that are commonplace that just would not have taken place there. And our society has been transformed because of people that are change agents. They want to get into whatever institution they can get into, and they want to change it. And what they want to change it from are any norms and moral absolutes that come from the Word of God. This is about Satan's war.
Yeah, AB, they stopped the stream completely. They didn't say that, though. It just went down. And I think it was because I was playing Amar Safari's War on Israel. So I think if you're a little channel like me, you're not going to be able to play the truth about that.
On God's law. And we're going to be unpacking that in the history of just how they did that. Now, this is a fellow here, Franciscus Rabelais, and he was involved in the Benedictine order, and he was also a Franciscan monk, and I guess he didn't like it too well. And in 1535, he began writing a series of novels where there was a giant called Gargantua, and this giant Gargantua built the Abbey of Thelema. Now, I've been quite familiar with Mr. Crowley and done
After last Monday, when the Palestinian protesters got up and chanted "Kill the Jews" in Sydney Opera House, the coppers have laid down the gauntlet to them now. They're not going to let them come back into the city and protest again. So yeah, our coppers are on to the Palestinians now.
Been looking at him for a number of years now, but I never knew until researching for this broadcast tonight that the Abbey of Thelema and do what thou wilt is the whole of the law. Crowley did not originate it. It come from this fella here, Franciscus Rabelais. And it is just amazing that he wrote like 5 novels that were published in the 1500s. It became very popular, and of course, in Mr. Gargantua, and here's these pictures are just really wild of Gustav Dor, of this giant Gargantua. And he was a very fleshly, of course. He enjoyed all of his fleshly indulgences. And Gargantua built the Abbey of Thelema, where it wasn't just men there, but they had the men and the women there, and they were free to do anything they wanted, to have their orgies and do what thou wilt, was the law of the Abbey of Thelema, started not by Mr. Aleister Crowley, but by this man, Franciscus Rabelais. Now, this is the basic concept that was laid down for the Hellfire Club. The Hellfire Club, and we should say the Hellfire Clubs, they were based upon the concept of Rabelais' Abbey of Thelema, built by this giant, the Nephilim Gargantua. And this fella here is very important in the history of the Hellfire Clubs. He really started the first one. And he started it in London in 1720. Now, you're going to appreciate this timeline. I'll give you 3 historical bullet points here. In 1717, the Grand Lodge of England started, the Grand Lodge, Mother Lodge of Freemasonry in England. In 1720, 3 years later, Philip, the Duke of Wharton, started his Hellfire Club with 40 elite people in London, both men and women, based upon the Abbey of Thelema, do what they will, they did whatever they wanted. And it got, they just did every debaucherous thing they wanted to do. And then 2 years later, in 1722, Philip, the Duke of Wharton, became the head of all Freemasonry, the Grand Master of all Freemasonry. So 1717, the lodge started. 1720, he starts his Hellfire Club. 2 years later, he's running the whole thing. And Mr. Hellfire Club. So this is a real glimpse into, when you get people together and you know all this stuff about them, I tell you what, it helps you move right up to the top. And this is an old game. This has been played for a long time. And it's the basic way that Satan operates to move his people right up the ladder.
Yeah, we were talking about this before the show, but it's such a good way for these people to get their feelers out. I think in the book you read, it talked about being a feeler. It's getting your feelers out to see who is wicked along with you. Who can you trust to go above and beyond the wicked stage with you? And they start to filter people through this process, man. It's amazing. But in Evansville, for instance, David, the guy that probably has the most power in Evansville isn't the mayor, isn't the sheriff, isn't anybody like that. It's a guy that actually owns a strip club. He owns a strip club. He procures the different things. Some would say he's does human trafficking. Some would say he's a drug trafficker. But this guy is friends with all the powerful people and in a very powerful position as a strip club owner. So you can only imagine the kind of parties this guy has put together, and probably how much dirt he has on a lot of these people.
Yeah, that's absolutely. That's the way that this has rolled for a long, long time, and that's the way it still rolls today. No doubt about that.
I think that's one reason the scripture warns so heavily against it. We've been going through the Book of Proverbs series on the website, and one of the things that just warns so much against is just falling for the fleshly activities, because all of these fleshly activities end up a point to where you may end up in the middle of one of these hellfire clubs. The next thing you know, you've gotten yourself compromised in these positions. This happens a lot with people.
Yeah, yeah. And it's so easy to trap politicians or law enforcement people in this. And it's a game they play very well. Now, in the big picture here, what we've got, what we're going to see unfold, as Mr. Rablace, he came up with the law of the Lema, which is do.
I loved how that scripture finished off. I was never here. That ended really well. Not for them, for us.
What thou wilt is the whole of the law. That means God's law's out. And that's what it's all about here. The Hellfire Club is a war on the law of God. It's a war on any moral restraint. Its goal is to reduce society to much what we see today. And it's still swirling down the sewer as we speak. And we know what Jesus said. I think not that I am come to destroy the law of the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law till all be fulfilled. And we cannot help but recognize the modern theological bent of the so-called evangelical church in their disregard and all but total nullification of God's law. This is nothing but one of the outcries of this very thing. And we've talked about the grace revolution, which is nothing but the sin revolution that goes in, that is so popular in the biggest churches here in the United States, that grace covers everything, so there's nothing you can do that'll ever separate you from God. And this creates a little hellfire club in people's minds that, I can do what I will and still go to heaven, and people are going to do what they will. And it's because their hearts have never been changed and regenerated.
There's definitely little versions of hellfire clubs in churches as well. I mean, when you really think about it too, I mean, fraternities, all these different organizations, there's miniature versions of these hellfire clubs that just catch and gather everybody like them. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Well, I could tell some stories. I won't. But what John says is very true. There is much that goes on that shouldn't. Now, in Ecclesiastes chapter 9 and verse 18, wisdom is better than weapons of war, but one sinner destroyeth much good. And when a bad apple and a sinner, whether it's in an assembly that gathers together to worship the Lord, whatever situation is, you get one of these stinkers in the midst of something.
Yep, that's him, Diane. Well done. That's him.
It's amazing the absolute destruction that they can cause. And the word of God is so true. Now, here's a fella here that had his own little war on the law of God, Mr. Sabotage Zevi, and we have talked about this fella before, John, and we've done an entire broadcast on Mr. Zevi not that long ago on the Midnight Ride. I think we called it the Kabbalah Wizards. Is that right?
Yeah, Flight of the Kabbalah Wizards, I believe. And I think we did that one on Rumble, David, because it was just some of the stuff that we described on that was a little bit too hard for YouTube, I think, but possibly. But man, I think people should check it out for sure over on Rumble. What an awesome broadcast. That book is really eye-opening, I think, in a lot of ways. There are other books that detail some of this stuff, but that one did a really good job of tying all of that, what you're talking about here, that twisting of the law into modern secret societies and into how governments are ran.
Yeah. And the book John's referring to here is 1666, Redemption Through Sin. There it is, by Robert Seffer. And Mr. Zevi, he proclaimed himself to be the Messiah in 1666. and he believed in the concept of the holy sinner. And he would say that the bigger the act of sin you commit, that the more it showed the glory of God in forgiving you. And I mean, they were in for wife swapping. He would, and Joseph Frank after him, Joseph Frank, they continued in the Frankist. And I mean, they would literally give their children out for sex to other people, wife swap. There's nothing that they would not do. And for Mr. Zevi, who based what he did upon the Kabbalah, this is something that became very, very popular. One little excerpt here. We're going to talk about the Festival of the Lamb in just a moment, but I'll read a little excerpt here from this book, which we read for research for this. It's The Secret History of the Hellfire Club. And in laying the foundation for this, you cannot leave out Mr. Sabbatai Zevi. He wrote this, Mr. Geoffrey Ash, on page 24 of this book. He says, it was not a long step from this soft peddling of the law to a marking down of morals in general. The Zohar, and that is the most preeminent book of the Kabbalah, the Zohar hinted that the Messiah himself, when he did come, would be outwardly evil. In the 1640s, this heady book was to inspire an actual would-be Messiah, Sabbatai Zevi of Smyrna, who promised to do away with the law. And as we have said, there was nothing that he would not do or pursue in his concept of the holy sinner. And just again, could you just imagine that whenever he was able to compromise a man or a woman in these sexual practices, that, you know, he had them, you know, I mean, he's got you. Could you imagine giving a child to someone to have sex with? I mean, that's how bad this was. It's every bit this bad and more. You talk about a hellfire club set on the fire of hell. That's what it is. And you see, all of these things, they have this common flavor. God's law must go. And that war on God's law is still on, isn't it? And in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 8, and then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. And that word wicked in the lexicon, this is number 459 in the Greek. And what that means is destitute of the law, destitute of the Mosaic law, departing from the law,
Diane, that model is proof you can't put lipstick on a pig and make it pretty. That's the exact proof. That guy who just got awarded prettiest girl can't put lipstick on a pig.
All lawless. And literally, this is the false prophet, that his program is no law. And this
Phil, good night, mate.
the
God
ideal
bless.
Platform for Sabbatai Zevi to proclaim himself to be the false, the beast, doing away with God's law. And, you know, sometimes I almost think I'm a little too hard on these dispensationalists, but when you think about them, I'm not hard enough. This is nothing but the beast agenda. And whenever you denigrate God's law, even the least bit, you have bitten into this beast agenda. God's moral law will stand, and it will stand against all the attacks of these pagan devils. And the churches today are playing right into the game plan of the Hellfire Club. Do away with God's law. And this is the absolute revealed biblical agenda of the beast himself, to do away with the law of God.
And that's really important for them to be able to do anything that they're doing here. You know, if you were a follower of the law, you're not going to find yourself in a place like this. You know, the Bible, it's very clear that they use alcohol as one of the main things too to kind of get people to go there. It almost reminds you of a modern day bar. And I'm not saying all bars are hellfire clubs now, but if you think about it, during those time periods when they had these clubs, there was a big divide between what purists were and what absolute pagans were. There's a big divide there. So having a place that people could drink and act foolish and belligerent would have been a huge act against the church at that time. There's no doubt about it. And now it's just aligned with the church almost. And sometimes the churches don't mind. They go and frequent some of these places, some of the people in the church. And so the law being done away with, according to the church, makes it so easy for it to flourish. And, that's why the scripture tells us to be sober, be vigilant, because the devil is like a roaring lion seeking who he can devour. And so who better than somebody to stumble along because they didn't follow God's law, they didn't want to follow God's law, and they stumbled themselves into a situation where they are a part, I guess, accidental Satanist all of a sudden.
And
yeah, that's true, guys. There's no evidence of these beheaded babies, is there? I know they come out with that, but there is no evidence so far. I'm not saying they're not capable of doing that, but they haven't shown it. Like someone said in the chat, what they're showing these things on live now, are they?
We're studying this tonight in the backdrop of the way that there has been social transformation. And just think about what happened. One of the big change agents in about 1920 here in America was John Dewey. And John Dewey introduced the concept of moral relativism into the public school system. And basically, there's no moral absolutes. There is no definitive. We can no longer use that outmoded Bible to give us moral absolutes of absolute right and wrong. Your truth isn't my truth, the whole on and on they go. And now there's not even a moral absolute if you're a little boy or a little girl. We can't even say that for sure. We have Supreme Court justices can't define what a woman is. This is where this is going. And it starts with the change agent. And the change is against the moral standards of God. And whenever we budge one little bitty inch from the absolute final authority, the Word of God and God's law and the doctrine of Christ, we have become a part of the problem instead of the solution. And that is our job. We are to stand for the absolute, unchanging norms and standards of God. And it all comes down to that. Satan wants to change society into his image and away from the standards of God. It's that simple. That's what we're looking at here.
One of the original change agents
Died here, Mike, from around the world. Come on, will you give me a yell, please?
that I can remember in the Bible was this Balaam and Balak situation.
Oh, yeah.
That's a change situation where a hellfire club, and we're just speaking in terms that modern day terms, but a hellfire club based.
Yeah, I was never here. I'm still working on that. Love thy enemies. I do not like the Muslims. I don't even like them. So I got a lot of work to do there.
Where the children of Israel were and promoted prostitution, all those
that's
things.
right. Yeah,
basically changing the society to a way it could be judged. God wasn't going to punish, or he wasn't going to curse Israel, but because of their own sins, because of whatever change agents were brought in, the Bible tells us that it was because of the teachings of Balaam, teaching Balak to cast a stumbling block, that these people were cursed by God.
Yeah. In the letters to the 7 churches, Jesus said, I have somewhat against you because you suffer that woman Jezebel to teach and seduce my servants. Yeah, Jezebel was a change agent bringing in false doctrine. And there are these people, you see them at work all the time. You see them in chat rooms. They want to spread their agenda. They want to spread their demonic filth. They want to do everything they can to bring their poison and their leaven with them wherever they can go. I'll read just a little bit here from this book by Robert Seffer, 1666, Redemption Through Sin, and read just a little bit about Sabbatai Zevi and after him, Joseph Frank. And like John said, we did a
Yeah, Jerusalem Post confirmed it. That's Jerusalem Post. It would do that. They're Israeli. So, yeah.
complete midnight ride on the, and it's amazing because this Joseph Frank was there with Rothschild and Adam Weishaupt at the founding of the Illuminati. So this is really, really important concepts in history there on that, the flight of the Kabbalah wizards, I believe we called it. But it says
Maybe,
here,
Shawnee,
it is
maybe.
thought by some scholars, this is on page 16 of Mr. Sever's book, it is thought by some scholars that Zevi had deeper connections with the Sufi order. Some similarities between the Sabbatean and Don May include the deliberate violation of the halal ritualistic group sex or wife swapping, ecstatic singing, chanting, and belief in the mystical Kabbalah. A celebration on the 22nd day of the Hebrew month of Adar, known as the Festival of the Lamb. They said that the violation of the Torah had become its fulfillment, which they illustrated by the example of a grain of wheat that rots in the earth. That's how much they hated the God's law. And it says that it ended in total darkness with religious sexual sharing of daughters and wives. And a little note here, Jacob Frank, and he was the successor of Sabbatai Zevi, and he started the secret society called the Don May. And on page 17, Mr. Sefer writes, Jacob Frank, whose followers regularly sought redemption through infamous religious sex orgies on solstices and equinoxes. Now, isn't it amazing? And of course, we've done so much in so many broadcasts about how the solstice and the equinox, these are the highest times of the satanic revelings, whether it be witchcraft or the Don May or whatever. And so what does the church do? And instead of doing the feast of God that the Bible says to do, let's not do that. Let's do the equinoxes and the solstices. It's absolute insanity. But when you do away with the law of God, I guess you can do what thou wilt, can't you?
That's exactly it, man. That's such an interesting thought too. You know, this time of year, I didn't see hardly any mainstream churches talking about trumpets or atonement or Feast of Tabernacles, but a lot of them already have their Halloween decorations up, man. It's amazing how far we've fallen and people don't even see it.
Yeah, they're
Diane, will you send that link to me on Skype, please?
Have their trunk or treat parties. Get ready for that. Well, I tell you what we're going to do on Halloween Eve on FOJC. We're going to have a prayer-a-thon. We're going to have a throw the devil in the trunk prayer-a-thon. So we're going to do. Now, in Jude 12, it's interesting here because we see, and this goes way back. I could bring Morals and Dogma in here that talked about a counterfeit Passover that was practiced in Egypt before the time of Christ. But it says in Jude 12, these are spots in your feast of charity when they feast with you, feeding themselves without fear. Clouds they are without water, carried about of winds.
Thanks,
trees
Lord.
whose fruit withereth, without fruit, twice dead, plucked up by the roots, which means at one time they were true believers. They died, they were born dead, they were born again, then they died again. We're talking about apostates here. And it just really seems to be that when it comes time for the feasts of God, that Satan absolutely will go all out in an assault with every squirrel that he can pull out of the forest. It just never fails. In 2 Peter 2:13, and shall receive the reward of unrighteousness as they that count it pleasure to riot in the daytime. Spots they are and blemishes, sporting themselves with their own deceivings while they feast with you. And these change agents and these people that would promote wickedness and debauchery and lawlessness, they would come in to the early celebrations of the feast. And oh, yeah, the early church celebrated the feasts of God. We could bring our books out and show you that one. And they would come into the agape love feast. A little sinner destroys much good. This is a program that we can see going on in the time of the New Testament, and it's one that continues on. It is indeed the program of the Hellfire Club. In Daniel 7:25, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, the beast that is, and shall wear out the saints. Anybody getting weary out there? Of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. This is another one of the primary satanic agendas, to change the times and laws. This is something that there's an undeniable pattern here. We'll do away with God's times, and we'll just have ourselves a little satanic party, and then we'll say it's okay because the real laws do what you will. And this is a consistent program that we can see that they have been implementing for many, many, many years. Now, there's another fella here that, as we look at the history of the Hellfire Clubs, that we need to take a look at, Mr. John D. And Mr. John D was a really, really interesting fellow. I'll read just a little bit about Mr. D from The Secret History of the Hellfire Clubs by Mr. Geoffrey Ash. And it said, D is a difficult man to labor. The word magician, though correct, is inadequate. He was astrologer royal to Elizabeth I. He was an early propagandist of overseas expansion to first employ the phrase British Empire. He was an active, valued secret agent, foreshadowing not only James Bond, but even the famous code number 007. In 1555, he was arrested for plotting to kill the Queen with black magic. He was quite the guy. And he used a mirror, the magic mirror concept of scrying. It goes back to John D. He was a master occultist. And some of the rituals that we're going to look here is important. And we have here a picture of John D. and Edward Kelly summoning spirits in a graveyard. And what they would do, and Edward Kelly would summon the spirits, and then John D. would interrogate them. And they said that the language that these spirits were speaking
Enochian language
were Enochian.
Yep.
And they developed, and it would kind of roll. Mr. Kelly would summon it, John D. would interrogate it, and then Kelly would get the interpretation. It's a demonic tongue and interpretation. And from this were developed what has been known in Golden Dawn ritual magic and also in the Satanic Bible as the Enochian calls. And these are the high invocations of the dark powers of the satanic realm. And there again, poor old Enoch. Remember, first Enoch good, second and third, you better stay away from it. Totally, totally spiritually toxic. And one of the things that was emphasized from these devils that were communicating with John D. and Edward Kelly was do what thou wilt was the whole of the law. It was made plain to them that this was the real law of God. And here again, we have the reemphasification. It started with Mr. Rabelais, do what they wilt, and then it come down demonically and supernaturally revealed to Mr. Kelly and Mr. John D. And this laid the foundation for the next step forward of the formation of the next Hellfire Club that would continue this way of operation. But I tell you what were these guys thinking, John? I mean, it's frightening to think people go to this depth of evil, but they do.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too, John D. being a kind of a 007 agent, because obviously the intelligence agencies, they use this style to collect information and material. You know, also his ties, you were talking earlier about his ties with America. And also, if you look at like Francis Bacon, he wasn't an actual member of the Hellfire Club, but he was a member of Brotherhood of St. Francis of Wycombe, Order of the Knights of West Wycombe, and the Order of Friars of St. Francis of West Wycombe, which were very similar, and had a lot of that stuff going on. So there, a lot of the people that formed our country, and I'm sure you're going to get to.
Shawnee, I think there's 3 books of Enoch, but only book 1's the safe one.
A lot more of that, but they were invested in this stuff.
They were all in. They were all in, I guarantee you. My goodness. Now, this is again, this is where the tire meets the road. Matthew 26:42. He went away again the second time and prayed, saying, "O my Father, if this cup may not pass away from me except I drink it, thy will be done." Jesus submitted himself to the will of the Father. And when we are born again, our stubborn will is broken from self and is submitted unto the law and the will of God. We'll look at that word Thelema. And the Abbey of Thelema was originated, as we said, by Franciscus Rabelais. And this was made popular in our time through Aleister Crowley, the law of Thelema, do what thou wilt, the whole of the law. And Mr. Crowley had his own Abbey of Thelema in Italy, and Mussolini kicked
What's going on
Aleister
with the
Crowley.
camera?
You know, Mussolini wasn't
Not
known for high
focusing.
morals, but Mussolini kicked Aleister Crowley, deported him, kicked him out of Italy, and then he went to Pasadena, California, and he started the first OTO chapter in Pasadena, California, which L. Ron Hubbard and the Rocket Man, Jack Parsons, were part of that original OTO chapter.
No, it says Joseph Thayer.
Out there in Pasadena, California. And this actual word, Thelema, well, what got Crowley kicked out, he would have these do what thou wilt parties out there at his Abbey of Thelema. And there was a teenage girl. She was very in her early teens. And she was walking back into town from Crowley's Abbey of Thelema. And she was just so drugged and abused that she just died and just laid there by the side of the road. And Mussolini himself deported Aleister Crowley at that point. And of course, America will take him. You know, there you go. But one of the biggest change agents of all time. Now, that word Thelema, number 2307 in Thayer's lexicon, and it means absolutely that which a person wills and chooses to do. And the will of man is totally bent towards self. And in 2 Corinthians 5:17, therefore, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things are become new. That's the only thing that will break our stubborn fallen nature away from self. It's repenting of sin, bowing the knee to Christ as Lord, and accepting the payment, the death of Christ upon the cross as payment for our sin debt. That will give us new birth. That will give us a desire.
One of the, I didn't pick it up, but Matthew 26, I think he said, I'm not sure.
To do what is right instead of what is wrong. A person always does what they want to do. If you see a person sinning, that's because they want to do it. And until we're changed to where our want to is changed, we're going to keep doing what we will. And that it will be an unending spiral that will go down to the very pits of hell, quite literally. Mm-hmm. Now, this fella here, Sir Francis Dashwood, he established in the 1700s in England what they called the Abbey of Mindleham. And this is the Hellfire Club that most people are most familiar with. This was tremendously influential. And they're one of the most famous frequenters of the Hellfire Club was Mr. Benjamin Franklin. And we're going to give you a little more of the history there. And you can just see there, there was caves built underneath an abbey, and it was called Mendelham Abbey. And you can see here the one face with the upside down cross. We're talking satanic rituals, every kind of sexual debauchery you could imagine. And it was full blown. They were down there in their cave, do what thou wilt. And they were protected because some of the most elite and powerful men in England and America were participating in that. So we're going to play a little video here on the Hellfire Caves from Hidden History, and we're going to watch a little bit of this, and it'll get us caught up here a little bit with some of the history of the Hellfire Club. So here we go.
They were said to have hired, how shall I put this to maintain the monetizational and algorithmic integrity of this video, ladies of the night, evening women, femme de la nuit. Anyway, these practitioners of the oldest profession were said to have dressed as nuns in debauched episodes in the expansive central chamber. This was known as the banqueting hall. In it, they were surrounded by strange carvings of skulls, statues of female goddess figures from classical Greece, and even a recreation of the river Styx from Greek mythology,
Wow.
the river to the underworld. Members of the Hellfire Club wore white flowing robes and adopted religious titles like abbot. They wore masks and a badge with the club's motto, Libertate Amicatiae Sac, sacred to liberty and friendship. Although another motto would also be attributed to the club, Fais ce que tu voudrais, do what thou wilt, a phrase that would later be adopted by the infamous occultist Aleister Crowley. No one really knows exactly what took place at these meetings, which were kept highly secret, but they could have included pagan practices, occult rituals, and even black magic and devil worship. The official guidebook rather glosses over some of the more lurid tales of debauchery, but the author, one Sir Francis Dashwood, 11th Baronet of West Wickham, a descendant of the cave's builder, is either sticking scrupulously to the verifiable facts or perhaps seeking to defend the family name. It makes for an interesting read nonetheless. So who was a party to the meetings at the caves? This again is open to interpretation, but is likely to have included the artist William Hogarth, radical journalist John Wilkes, John Montague, the 4th Earl of Sandwich, the judge and antiquarian Robert Vansittart, and perhaps most significantly, considering what happened in 1776, US founding father, pioneer of electrical science, and serial philanderer Benjamin Franklin. Franklin was a close associate of Dashwood, and together, when relations between the American colonies and the home government deteriorated, they endeavored to bring about a reconciliation. Franklin, who visited the caves on a number of occasions, had hoped that America would develop within the British Empire and by its growth become the centre of the empire without struggle or bloody revolution. In 1770, the pair drew up a plan of reconciliation as an attempt to find a basis for compromise which might avert any open conflict towards independence. The plan was ultimately unsuccessful, and the rest, as they say, is history. But was the seed of the independence movement born in the Hellfire Club meetings and banquets in these caves?
Yes, Shawnee, they're related to the Freemasons, 100%.
John.
Okay.
But isn't it amazing that Francis Dashwood and Benjamin Franklin were very close friends. When Franklin was in England, he stayed in Dashwood's home. And there were actually talks during the Revolutionary War, and we might call it a plan for America to stay under the British.
I was never here. Anton LaVey, who wrote the Satanic Bible, on his deathbed, he said, "Oh my, there's something, what have I done? There's something dreadfully wrong." So he thought when he died, they think when they die, they're going to hell to party with the devil. That's what they literally think they're doing. But he realized too late, he went, "Oh my, what have I done? There's something dreadfully wrong." And his high priestess who was with him, she turned Christian because of that.
Rule negotiated by Dashwood and Franklin. Some people theorize that that actually happened. You know, it makes you wonder with some of the things we're
They
seeing.
think they
and
can
some of
win,
the
that's
things
why they're
we've talked
fighting.
about in regard to what we see going on with Prince Charles and the Committee of 300. But that's amazing to me, John, that they actually, it's a known fact that Franklin and Dashwood, let's do us a little satanic ritual. Let's just have an orgy, then let's sit down and let's plan the future of America here. Yeah, I bet that'll work out probably just about like with what we got today, you know?
Yeah, it's hard to think that they didn't plan all of this out. You know, it sounded so good. Freedom sounds really, really good when people are good. Sounds great when people are good and they're not trying to rape everybody, rob everybody, do nasty stuff. It sounds great, but the kind of people that were wanting freedom may not have been the kind of people that we think they were.
And you know it was good I was never here? We got to hear him doubt it. We got to hear him say, geez, I blew it. I went the wrong way.
It looked like.
Yeah, it is. I think it was John Adams that said, we have a republic if we can keep it.
Yeah.
And a republic will protect the rights of the few against the rights of the many. And I'm afraid we've done and lost that. But we've got another video here. This is another one of the Hellfire clubs. The concept started with Rabelais, and the Duke of Wharton actually had the first Hellfire club in England. Then Mr. Dashwood, and at the same time we had these Irish boys. They had their Hellfire club, and they were totally off the hook. I mean, a lot more got out about what went on in this Hellfire club. I mean, there were things like episodes where they would get so out of control that in one instance, they doused a guy with brandy and set him on fire. I mean, they would just get totally crazy. And some of the stories that were told there, and how, and why do these things go on and no one gets punished? Well, that's what we got now, don't we? Right here in America, outrageous crime goes on just from Mr. Biden, like we're talking $21 million from foreign countries.
Yeah, for his priestess, 100%. She turned Christian because of it.
You know?
So I can only assume when he's on his deathbed, the demons come up to grab him. That's all like in Ghost. That's all I can assume.
One gets punished. The same thing here. They pour brandy on people and set them on fire because the people here, they were the elite and the powerful that were doing what they will. The whole is the law. It's the same old story, the same old song and dance.
You ready to play this?
Let's play it. Let's look at the little history
during those years. That's spooky, like a family spending a nice afternoon at the Hellfire Club. Let's go. They held dark masses there, engaged in debaucherous behavior, drank a mixture of whiskey and butter, and always held an empty seat for the devil himself. The mascot for the Hellfire Club was a black cat, and supposedly a large black demon cat roams the woods surrounding the Hellfire Club on this hill. So that's fun. There are tales of human and animal sacrifices, satanic rituals, and demonic manifestations. Well, this is a big room. Shut up, kid. So this is the fireplace of the building, and when they were building this, these stones from an old...
I don't know how to do Zoom, but I should look into it.
Iron of prehistoric.
Because I'd love to do that, where we ring and tell each other our testimonies. I'd love to do that.
To build it. That's why it's cursed. It's supposedly the stones from what used here. Put here from the tomb. That's why it's cursed. It's pretty creepy. It's so small. Another story about the club concerns a young farmer who, curious to find out what went on at the meetings, climbed up Montpellier one night. He was found by the members of the club, dragged into the building, and allowed to see the night's activities. He was found the next morning, wandering the area, unable to speak, and they say he spent the rest of his life deaf and dumb, unable to even remember his own name.
Yeah, Diane, I know you just download the app, but how to work it out? I'm going to look into it because I don't know how I'd work it out and do the emails and how I'd get little squares up there so we talk. So there's also StreamYard. I really should look into it though. But technology like that scares me because I always get it wrong.
Their story tells of how the club kidnapped, murdered, and then ate a local farmer's daughter.
I'll get Gabe to help me to survey with it when I hang up, guys. I'll check it out. Zoom.
Here's another story. A young visitor to the local farmhouse insisted on going to investigate the Hellfire Club. He was found dead the next day, lying face down in a mountain stream. His host believed that the boy had been murdered, and he asked the clergyman to accompany him to the Hellfire Club. When they got to the club, darkness was falling. They knocked on the door, and it was opened by a tall, black-cloaked man. When they entered the building, they were immediately grabbed from behind and hustled into the dining room. A banquet was about to begin, so the two men were pushed into chairs. A majestic-looking black cat stalked into the room and took his place at the head of the table. The priest noticed that the ears of the cat were not erect, but lying like horns at either side of the head. The wide, deep eyes glared hatred at the priest, who rose to his feet, intending to leave the devilish assembly. He was grabbed and pushed back into his chair. Realizing that he had a small bottle of holy water in his pocket, he threw it with all possible force at the cat, while at the same time he recited an exorcism. Chaos erupted, but in the middle of it all could be heard the terrified screams of the farmer. The priest continued to pray until the smell of sulfur and smoke forced him to leave the building. Outside, he found the farmer lying on the ground, his face and neck deeply scratched by strong claws. He never recovered. According to legend, the next morning, the burned-out Hellfire Club stood a ruin on the hilltop, as it does today. Supposedly,
there you go.
spirits and demons still lurk in the building.
Sorry about that. I'm
and the
trying to mute it here. There we
All
go.
right. Well, file that under all kinds of creepy. I tell you, just looking at this gives you creepy feeling, doesn't it, John?
Yeah, it does, man. That's a creepy place. I can imagine, I don't even want to imagine the kind of stuff that went on there, but I know that for somebody to have the guts to walk up on there it was probably pretty rare for somebody to actually be able to have the guts to walk up on there. And another thing I was just thinking about this is, like, I can imagine with people like Ben Franklin and looking at these characters, they probably had a hard time getting girls there unless they had somebody procuring these girls. I can't imagine that girls were willingly going into this place with these creepy looking dudes.
Yeah. And like it said there in the other one, they were prostitutes.
Yeah.
And they were paid for what they did. And yeah, I tell you, it's quite the thing to think about. And
yeah, it would be on YouTube.
It was actually the E Network that did a series called The Secret Societies of Hollywood. And they talked about what they were. They were little hellfire clubs, and they showed.
I haven't watched Stranger Things, but apparently they're right into the Montauk chair and things like that. So they probably do mention the Hellfire Club.
Several places that were secluded mansions where, it's shut scenario like the Tom Cruise, Nicole Kidman movie, where literally the Hollywood A-listers, you could go there and do what thou wilt. and I mean anything that thou wilt, thou could do there. And these places are now well known out there for the Hollywood A-listers. They know where these hellfire clubs are, and that's all they are. They're just hellfire clubs. These things, there are so many European mansions, many of them owned by the Rothschilds and secluded areas. That's how these people roll. That's how they roll, and it's been going on for a long time. And they have done their job well. They've done their job well.
Yeah.
This fella here, we can't leave out Mr. Crowley. And this is a picture of Aleister Crowley in his Masonic regalia. And we cannot miss the connection here with Freemasonry. The very first Hellfire Club was founded by Philip, Duke of Wharton, who became the Grand Master of all Freemasonry. And Aleister Crowley was not just a Freemason, but he was a celebrated Freemason. This man was so sick and depraved, he would do, he promoted human sacrifice. I can't even talk, I wouldn't even want to talk about the things this guy did, but he would make Satanists, other Satanists sick. They couldn't keep up with this guy. You talk about just a sick, demonic perv. You can't beat this guy.
Yeah.
You can't beat this guy. And at the time he was doing this, he was receiving Masonic honors all over. Now, how does that happen? Because the same way, you know, a little Aleister, he can hook you up with some evil, but once Aleister hooks you up with some evil, he's got you. And it was said of Mr. Crowley, and what he said of himself in his autobiography, he said, I move in the air of British aristocracy. And he certainly did. And in his book, in this book, Confessions of Aleister Crowley, he talks about how that Karl Kellner and Theodor Roos, two German fellows in the German OTO, that they recruited him out of Freemasonry into the OTO. And within Freemasonry, and this goes all the way back to Adam Weishaupt. Adam Weishaupt was a Jesuit, and then he founded the Illuminati, and then he joined Freemasonry because he saw Freemasonry as the vehicle to propagate his change agents of Illuminism. And within the broad structure of Freemasonry, there was the Golden Dawn that was it was founded and started and propagated and run by Freemasons. We had the Ordo Templar Orientis. Karl Kellner and Theodor Roos were both German Freemasons. They recruited Freemason Aleister Crowley into it, and they used Freemasonry to propagate it. And here's the deal. If a person's a Satanist and you're in the local lodge downtown and you see somebody that you think might go along with a little plunge down the dark side, and you invite them to a ritual, well, even if the person says no, they have sworn a death oath before they come into the door not to say a word about what goes on in that lodge that the chief of the police and the judges and the politicians go to. This is how this thing has come down and propagated for a long, long time. Satan has used the hellfire clubs and secret societies to compromise people, to control people, and it's going right now at a breakneck speed.
Yeah, and there's no mistaking when I feel the way I think of it too is like this is, and I said this earlier, but it's such a good way for them to see who's part of their team, because let's face it, these people that say that they entered the Illuminati in order to expose it, they had to be pretty dang wicked and evil themselves to get themselves to that point, because the stuff that they had to do in order to even get themselves to a point to where 33rd degree was on the table, there was some stuff. There was stuff before that 33rd degree initiation guaranteed that they knew that this person was the right person. And that's why it's like every time I hear somebody say that they're a previous 33rd degree Freemason, it might be the case. But if they didn't die or get thrown in prison after the fact, it's hard for me to believe it. like Captain Morgan, for instance. That is somebody that I could probably say this guy was legitimately a 33rd degree and came forth from it, because he ended up being killed for the stuff that he said about it. But it's interesting, man. Like they can sense it out. Evil senses evil. It's just like when you go to a place where, let's say, some people are interested in knitting, and you end up finding the people that are interested in knitting. Then you start getting together with the people who are knitting. Then you find out who the hardcore knitters are, and it just keeps on going, right? And I know knitting's not, probably most people that are listening here aren't looking for hardcore knitting.
Well,
partners, but
wow.
that's just the way it works.
Yeah. And I know John and I are thinking of the same guy here. And there's a guy out there that
good.
33rd degree Freemason.
Diane, I'm pretty sure New South Wales, Sydney's banned the Palestinians from holding protests as well. So we've turned on them as well.
Is a member of the OTO, but he's a good Freemason, a good OTO guy. He's going to tell us the truth. And John and I will quote Gerald Gardner, who's a 33rd degree Freemason, because of him telling the secrets of what's going on, so that we can understand and figure out their agenda and expose it. But in no way would we bring Gerald Gardner or these other towheads on and say, oh yeah, he's a good guy. He's going to tell you the truth. He's going to fight the devil. No. And boy, we could drop that. I mean, there's some big so-called Christian ministries that have tried to promote this guy as a good guy. No.
Yeah.
That ain't gonna happen here. Ain't gonna happen here. You got, like John says, you don't get there and have clean hands and a pure heart. No, you don't. And people can repent and come out, but when you repent, you're going to renounce it. You're going to repent. You're going to renounce it, and you're going to come out of it and renounce it for the evil demonic mess that it is.
And I think they're either going to kill you or you're going to pay the price. There's no way that they're doing these rituals and stuff and they're not filming. They're not waiting for the time to where it's like, you remember that day when we had that ritual. You remember that day when that prostitute came by. Well, here's a video, man, I found of you with that prostitute and with that in that ritual. Were you sure you're ready to leave? Are you sure? Because this is what happens when you leave. And that's why it's like, yeah, they may repent and they come out. I believe that that's possible, but I don't believe they're coming out without that footage being revealed, without something being done to them. And when they get to that level, I really don't. Like, I just don't see it. Yeah, maybe 32nd degree down below, but once they get to that 33rd degree, they've already done some things that are beyond the point of no return, as far as maybe not forgiveness from God, but beyond the point of return, being able to live a life where they can just wander around the streets. I just don't believe that's possible. It's like the mafia. Once you're in type thing. I really believe that. At least at 33rd degree. I could be wrong, but I just can't see them letting
Probably right.
people like that get to that point without them knowing for sure that that person's on their team. I just can't see it.
Yeah. Some of you remember what happened in Matamoros, Mexico. Been several years ago now. And Matamoros is right across the border, and it's a popular spring break destination down at Matamoros. And there was a place discovered there where there was a cauldron that had, it was like a dozen different parts of bodies in a cauldron where they were doing palo mayombe, human sacrifice. And drug traffickers would do rituals with human sacrifice, and they would believe it would make them invisible. And the kind of the way it would go, and the old game that's been played and is still played, invite the local mayor over and get him good and drunk, and then just let him go with the girl, and we'll just videotape it, and there we got him. But what they would do, they would just bring everybody in, and they'd be standing around a table, and they'd be videoing it, and all of a sudden there's a child laid on the table, and its throat's cut, just like that. And there they are. They're videotaped with the human ritual sacrifice of the child. They own them for life. And I tell you what, letting down your moral guard, in whatever station in life you are, the devil will get you. He wants you to he's out there seeking to devour you. He really is. And that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
Now, in this book here, The Life and Times of a Modern Witch by Janet and Stuart Farrar, and they wrote the Witch's Bible. They're not little players in the game, they're big ones in the world of the occult. And I want to read something here on page 121 of this book. And it says here, it is generally agreed that the biggest single influence in the modern expansion of ritual magic and the occult explosion in general in the Western world was the Golden Dawn. Now, that's quite a statement, isn't it?
Yeah.
The reason, have you seen the occult explosion lately? The occult just taken totally over. And according to these elite witches, that it was the Golden Dawn that propagated that. Going on, that says this magical fraternity, founded by Freemasons at the end of the 19th century, developed a complex ritual system with 10 degrees of initiation relating to the Kabbalistic Sephiroth. Now, we've got a little pattern there. We keep seeing Kabbalah, we keep seeing Freemasonry. Going on, the Golden Dawn rituals, originally highly secret, were eventually published. And
okay, that's an interesting point. The UN might be behind it. Guys, we've got a referendum tomorrow where they're asking us to vote in the First Nation Aboriginals to give them a voice in Parliament, where they'll be able to sit there and pass judgment on every legislation passed in government. And they're going to get the last say on it. So they're dividing Australia by race. The Aborigines are going to have the upper hand because no legislation will get through Parliament. So we're getting asked to vote for a yes for the Aboriginal Parliament or no for the normal constitution. And so far, yes is really crashing bad, and it looks like it's going to fail. Thank God for that.
are the basis of several still existing fraternities and groups. Little change agents there. Now, some of the people involved in the Golden Dawn, Aleister Crowley was in the Golden Dawn. Arthur Edward Waite is another fella. He is a huge player. I could bring in a stack of books that Mr. Waite wrote that were occult classics. He wrote a history of Freeman. He wrote a Masonic encyclopedia, and he also wrote a textbook on black magic. You know, and a lot used to in seminars, I'd hold these two up side by side. Yeah. Do we see a connection here? And the connection between Freemasonry and these totally dark groups and these totally dark people, it's undeniable. I mean, good grief. And this book here, this is just one example of how not only was the Golden Dawn the disseminator, and well, we've got Crowley, we've got A.E. Waite, S.L. McGregor Mathers, who translated many of the Kabbalistic works into English. Just the major league players in the dark world were in the Golden Dawn, and they were change agents to the max. They were great at it. And I'll read just a little bit here from this book, The Hidden Church of the Holy Grail. We also did a complete midnight ride on the Hidden Church of the Holy Grail. And basically, and what Mr. Waite did in this book, which is called The Hidden Church of the Holy Grail, he maintains that within Catholicism, there is a secret society that is doing the real mass. And I'll just read what it says here on page 66. It says, as the secret words of consecration, the extra efficacious words which must be pronounced over the sacramental elements so that they may be converted into the arch natural you have in rightly in a lost or hypothetical book. It follows that since the Grail was withdrawn from the world together with its custodians, the Christian church has had to be content with what it has, namely a substituted sacrament. And what they're saying is that the Catholic Church, that they just have the phony mass, and it is not, the mass isn't good in the Catholic Church. We know that and understand it. But they're saying that we got the real words and we've got the real mass. And when they would do this real mass, there would be supernatural demonic miracles. And we've talked about a long time the prophesying of the false communion that will come when this will be actually will take over. And it says in the book of Daniel that the false prophet, a host will be given unto him, literally what they call the wafer in the communion. But just a little bit of the excerpts of what happens at this false mass. On page 35, it says they secured from this priest of a neighboring church who had celebrated mass on a certain occasion and had seen the consecrated elements converted into flesh and blood. I mean, there's all kinds of accounts. They would see a mystical child appear and enter into the host. They would see symbols appear on the bread. I mean, we're talking about a Luciferian mass. We're talking about, and we actually wrote a book called Luciferian Transmutation about this entire subject. This is the stuff. There's change agents working within Catholicism, which is rotten anyway, to totally make it full-blown Luciferian. There are change agents within Freemasonry, which is rotten anyway, that is just getting more rotten. What can you say? And what we have seen, and here is the foil of it all, we have the people that are professing Jesus Christ, instead of holding the line and saying, yes, the word of God's real, yes, God's law is real, they have thrown in the towel. They have thrown in the towel and they have given in with the tide that these hellfire clubs are sweeping our society totally down into the sewer.
So true, David. It's unfortunate too, because people get caught up in it that are really assuming you. Young men can get so easily caught up in these things, man. You know, and David, I know that you've probably heard stories of people going to parties, and then next thing you know, they stumbled across something like this. And I've heard testimonies of people that went to a party and they almost ended up being a sacrifice.
Yeah.
But this is the kind of stuff in Proverbs, you know, for instance, in chapter, I think it's 8 and 9, it talks about the woman who, the woman of wisdom who calls out for everybody to take her by the hand, right? And then it has the other woman who represents foolishness, calling other people by the hand. And you have these two dichotomies, and I don't believe there's a middle ground. I really don't believe there's a middle ground. I think that there's black and then there's white, and then in the middle, the gray doesn't exist. So people would like you to think that you can be both in the darkness and in the light at the same time, like in Freemasonry, raised in the dark and in the light. But the fact of the matter is, you're either going after the woman of wisdom, like it says in Proverbs, or you're going after the woman of foolishness, like it says in Proverbs. And the woman of foolishness, it even says in there that her ways lead to death. It leads to the Rephaim. It leads to demons and darkness. And it says that, and it's amazing that people think, oh, I'll never get caught up in something like this or like this. But you don't, when you mix alcohol, you mix drugs, you mix women, you mix whatever the case may be, whatever your vice is, you mix those things together, the stuff isn't far away from it. I really believe that it's not far away. There's probably been parties that I've been to where this stuff has been going on in the background, not even knowing it was there. This stuff is not far behind debauchery. It's not far behind drunkenness. It's not far behind orgies and all of that stuff. That's why the Bible calls them works of the flesh.
I guarantee you that I have heard far too many of these stories in Evansville, Indiana, when we lived there and worked for years with people coming out of the occult there. Far too many of them. It is, it is just so prevalent that it's frightening. And you know what John said is so true. You're either obedient to the doctrine of Christ and the commandments of God, God's law, you're not. You're just like a belly button. You're an innie or you're an outie. There's no in between. You're either if you're not in submission and obedience to the doctrine of Christ and the commandments of God, you're a part of the problem. You're not a part of the solution, and you're not in a right place with the Lord. You're in the wrong place.
Yeah.
We're going to look here at a book and we've featured this because it's so important. We were talking about how that Blavatsky and Bailey, Ledbetter and Besant and the whole theosophical hierarchy, that they believed they were actually, and I believe them, that they were actually in contact with physical entities that had manifested, literally in contact with Nephilim. This was the claim of Benjamin Krim, that, and I frankly believe them, and we unpack their statements and claims and the feasibility of it from the spiritual realm on another midnight ride. What was the name of that one, John?
David, I don't know.
We've done so many of them, I can't remember.
I don't know. I don't remember. But I do. We've talked about this book a lot of times. I know it really is relevant to the New Age stuff.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Alice Bailey was the queen of the New Age in her day.
Yeah.
And her husband, Foster Bailey, he was lecturing in Masonic lodges all over the world. I have his books. I can't remember the exact title of it, but I have his book at home. He wrote on Freemasonry, still published by the McCoy Masonic Publishing Company. But this is what it says on page 511. Here comes some more change agents. She says, the three main channels through which the preparation for the New Age is going on might be regarded as the church. Number one, the church. Because you got to compromise the church, because if you got people standing for God's law, like Wesley and Spurgeon and the Puritans did, it's going to make it a little testy for them getting their agenda. So yeah, the three main channels through which the preparation for the New Age is going on might be regarded as the church, the Masonic fraternity, and the educational field. There is the satanic trifecta of infiltration. My goodness, we've said so much, and we could never say enough about the grooming that has come in the schools. It's absolutely horrific. It just is so disheartening, and goes on to say that on the same page there, the Masonic movement, when it can be divorced from political and social ends and from its present paralyzing condition of inertia, will meet the need of those who can and should wield power. It is the custodian of the law. Now listen to that. The Masonic fraternity is the custodian of the law, not God's law, but do what thou wilt.
Yeah.
It is the home of the mysteries and the seat of initiation. The methods of deity are demonstrated in its temple, and under the all-seeing eye, the work can go forward. It is a far more occult organization than can be realized, and is intended to be the training school for the coming advanced occultist. Wow. Quite a statement, isn't it?
Yeah.
Quite a statement. And you gotta appreciate their honesty. They said, we're coming into the church, we're coming into the lodge, we're coming into your schools, we're going to take them over, we're going to change it. And they have
Easily.
You
go ahead, David.
No, go ahead. I'm just saying
they easily have changed it. I mean, it made it easily. They came in so without even a hand up.
And we've got a situation where there's not a lot of fire and brimstone coming out of pulpits. Not a lot of fire and brimstone. Nothing gets them too excited and worked up. There's so much going on and so much needs to be said. But you know what will get them fired up? You tell them that God's law is still valid, and you tell them that those pagan holidays are demonic. Now that will get a fight out of them. That will get them mad. They won't get mad to fight against sin, but they will fight against the things of God if you try to bring them into their little group and expose their paganism. Now we got a fight on our hands.
Mm-hmm. So, thanks, Di. 7 minutes. Thank
A fellow
you.
we can't leave out in our discussion of Hellfire Clubs, kind of the epitome, Mr. Hellfire, Mr. Jeffrey Epstein, and the things that he did are unspeakable. The way that they would groom and recruit women, and actually, it's known that he was setting up his own selective breeding to actually do his own, a good Jewish boy that was doing a selective breeding program like Hitler. Now, we won't even go into that more, but the same thing. He's got his little place, and every place, every room, and every bedroom had a camera going constantly. The elite and the powerful of the world were there. And the FBI has all of those tapes. And you bet we're never going to see any of them.
Mm-hmm.
Because Mr. Epstein, and I know you all are very intelligent. You know the people, Prince Harry, the Clintons. You know, it's a laundry list of the rich and powerful that were in on this little Hellfire Club. And this is just a very relevant modern example of how this works and how this comes down. And if it were not for Mr. Philip, Duke of Wharton, and if it were not for Mr. Francis Dashwood and these other people going before, there would be no Jeffrey Epstein. And if the Church of the Living God, the Israel of God, would have been loud and clear and have stood their ground, it would have been much more difficult for them to do what they've done.
Yeah.
Malachi 3:6. For I am the Lord, I change not. Therefore, ye sons of Jacob are not consumed. Hebrews 13:8. Jesus Christ, the same yesterday and today and forever. And everybody said, Amen.
Amen. Man, David, thank you so much for this broadcast tonight. I think that it's so important to be able to know our enemy, and not only know him, but be aware of what's going on, be aware of the change agents and where they operate in, what kind of spirit and what kind of fruits they operate in. And this tells a lot, man. This tells a whole lot. When you start seeing weird stuff like this, don't just cast it off as weird behavior, because it's possibly even darker and deeper than what you may think. Because you'd be surprised how many of these people that are part of these clubs might be within your friends group, might be within your church group, might be within your school group, might be within your Chamber of Commerce business group. That's how John Wayne Gacy operated. He operated within the Chamber of Commerce, showed pornography, got it going real big, and had a whole group of people helping him out. He had a bunch of skeletons in his basement, and there's no way he could have put them all in there with his health problems. So he had a whole club of people, Hellfire Club, doing that stuff. That's what that was. That was a modern day Hellfire Club. A lot of these guys, even a lot of these serial killers said, look, you didn't even catch the worst one. I'm just...
Okay, I might jump over to Paul Begley now. He might be doing a song. I hope not. Okay, where is it? Where is Paul? He's down here.
Her husbands hated me. Not that they actually hated me, but there's like, are you watching that guy again? Are you serious? And what? And all of that. But then after a while, they start listening, and it starts to sink in. The Holy Spirit starts to get to them, and they start to listen what's going on. And next thing you know, they're giving their life to Jesus Christ. This has happened repeatedly, time after time after time after time. Unbelievable. So thank you for being faithful. Thank you for being faithful. tonight we're under what's called a state of alert for America. We're in a war that could be leading us right into Ezekiel 38. We certainly have witnessed something this week that we never dreamed was going to happen this quickly. Yet, I believe it was Mike from the World who said 4 times, 4 weeks in a row, he made this statement. He said, something's about to happen to Israel. And when it does, don't get nervous. Don't lose your faith. Don't be afraid. Well, look, God revealed this to him. This was one time that it was revealed to him. It wasn't something that he found out about intelligence. This was the Holy Spirit showing him that it was about to happen. That something was about to happen. So as he joins us here any second, let's welcome him tonight. And if there's anybody watching right now, if there's anybody out there who really, really are saying, man, I got to get my life right, because obviously we're in the end times. Obviously, your grandmother, your grandfather told you, keep your eye on Jerusalem. Keep your eye on Israel if you want to know how close we are to the rapture, how close we are to the coming of the Lord, how close Bible prophecy is moving. And now it's here. Now it's happening. And to me, it says, I got to work now harder than ever. The urgency to get people saved now has ramped up. I mean, unbelievable. Because today is the day of salvation. And joining us right now from somewhere around the world, Mike from around the world. Mike, how you doing tonight?
God bless you, Paul. I am doing okay, Pastor.
Thank you.
Doing okay.
Well,
everybody hold on.
We're holding on.
Hold on.
I mean, this has been okay. When you and I, the last show we did was last Friday, because I was on the road. And just after we got done with that broadcast, Mike, it broke loose. I mean, it was within a half hour, the attack, a horrific attack on Israel. And so I know you've been busy for this last week because of that. Can you tell us what this meant to you personally when you seen the things happening?
It's not a good situation, and it's what really got me was the pride and arrogance, how badly it blinded many nations. That's one of the biggest issues and problems, and it's still going on right now. It's still happening. I think that people are so self-absorbed and they have their personal agendas that they can't unify at a time where unification is going to be do or die. It really will be, and they still won't do it. They won't do it. They have it's some sort of root of bitterness that's beyond belief, causing a massive separation within our government. And of course, if our government can't get it together, who else is? Who else is?
Yeah, that's a great question. So
we have
we got a state of alert. I mean, what does this mean? What's this?
Okay, that's usually my Wi-Fi, guys. Hang on.
But they don't know, because it's totally caught them off guard, right?
Okay.
And in fact, it was just, I know all the rumors out there. For example, they said that Benjamin Netanyahu just ignored it. No, he didn't.
Yeah, Diane, they'll get away with it in France because the quarter of Paris is run by the Muslims. There's a whole sector that's Muslims. There's too many Muslims in France. They'll get away with it.
In fact, when he came back, he expressly said that something just like this was going to happen, and he was trying to halt it. But they, of course, everybody got in his way. Everybody did. All the experts said it was not, nothing like that would happen, this, that, and the other. And well, of course it did. And now we have another problem. Right now, this Hamas dealing, is one thing. But here's a greater issue. We have Iran sitting over there, right?
Right.
We have elements of Hezbollah that indeed helped out Hamas in the planning of this. And the reason why Hezbollah is not being spoken of is because they're directly sponsored by Iran. So if they get involved, we have to get involved, right?
Yeah.
We have to get involved by way of our army. And
troops.
The clock is ticking.
I mean, are you saying we already got some ships in the water and we got planes, I think, moving? I'm sure we got some more assets moving I don't even know about. Are you saying we have to fully get involved?
If Hezbollah is going to go forward with some more of their operations, we will have to get involved, because Hezbollah is known around the world as being an extension of Iran. That will involve the USA directly. Right now, it's somewhat passive because it's just Hamas. But of course, those weapons that Hamas has is, we have that's a pretty bad issue. To date, they have not used some of their up-to-date technology. And of course, they have a big stockpile. If they do, it's going to overwhelm Iron Dome. It's just not going to work.
So what do you mean by technology? You mean Hamas has better technology?
They have up-to-date missile systems. When I say up-to-date, I mean up-to-date. Patriot systems and the laser interceptors and Iron Dome and some more, defense systems are up and operational. But they also have tech that can weave in and out just as well as Iron Dome tech can. So they haven't used that yet. If they do, there are going to be lots of places hit. So if Israel puts a heavy hand upon Hamas, they're going to react. And if they do react, it will incorporate Hezbollah. Hezbollah is going to be incorporated into that. We already know that they were part of the planning. What was happening.
Yes.
And if they get involved, the USA has to directly get involved. That will start a ground campaign, an air campaign, and because of other elements like Russia, like Turkey, spread places in Syria, things of that nature. We can't do what we want to do. Remember, Putin still has that entire area covered by an early warning system. So he has radar coverage of just about the entirety of the Middle East.
Wow.
And
does he have air superiority?
Sure, if he wanted to express that, right, militarily, he absolutely could. He's got the entire place covered. And in 2015, he finished his defense net over Iran and large portions of the Middle East. And that is a Russian system, right?
Okay.
China helped out also. And remember, these guys have microwave weapons mounted on their aircraft and microwave shields. I know it's not very familiar with people, but they're not familiar with that. But a microwave shield can effectively cause a missile to, kind of start tracking ghost objects if it wanted to. It's also very dangerous in proximity to other aircraft. At about 3,000 to 5,000 feet out, they can concentrate in the bubble of that microwave to any given area. That's China's technology. China also has stealth fighters, and they match us as far as our tech and theirs. Our passball, the bluff, if the U.S. is bluffing at any stage, it's about to be tested.
Wow. Are you nervous? And you okay? You're a little nervous about this. I can sense it in your voice.
Well, they did not, like I said before, they were blinded. It's one thing to have a political, governmental civil war. It's another to silence military commanders. due to political views, right? Because you want to posture in front of the people, because lives are lost. See, it doesn't matter if Israel is in a bad predicament. They are right now. They're in a bad position. But you also have innocent people who have nothing to do with these military operations.
Yes.
There have been a lot of people lost. If they're not reporting the people who have actually been lost. If they did, the entire world would be outraged. It would cause too much of a reprisal.
So are you saying that over in Gaza right now that the death toll there is really a lot higher than what's being reported?
And Israel.
And Israel also?
Yeah.
Really?
And Israel.
I mean, Israel's reporting 1,300 dead and 3,300 injured, but you're saying that death toll is higher?
Yeah, it's higher than that. Yeah, of course they can't report that because that would be irresponsible. If you report a high death toll, you're going to essentially motivate certain bases, which will begin to respond themselves, right? Because of outrage, and so they keep those numbers down to a tolerable level based on whatever's happening.
Okay, should we see now? Joe Biden did come out and condemn this. He did. He also said, "I'm going to send more arms right here. I'm going to send more arms to Israel before the expected Gaza invasion." So that means he's doing that right now. And then he refroze the $6 billion. Is the reason he's making these he's backing up in some of the things he has said. He's doing some things that we didn't think he would do. Is it because this is a very serious situation right now?
Yes, it is. It is. It's very serious. You're looking at a country who essentially right to their north has a very large stockpile of chemical biological weapons next to nuclear weapons. If it came down to the two, right, chemical biological is more dangerous than nuclear weapons, right?
So you're saying there's chemical weapons right now, right there in the Middle East?
Oh yes. They're in Syria. They have them in Turkey. Of course, we had one of our bases in Turkey, and all assets have not been taken out of that pod yet. So there's still a lot of deadly weapons there. Jordan, same thing. They have some very high-tech devices, which are uncommon, unspoken of. In fact, hardly anybody knows things that are over there. Israel, of course, they are a hub to a degree for high-tech things. They have an underground base also. And if they already know that if Israel begins to take heavy blows, they will not hesitate to break relationships with everybody in the Middle East and retaliate. If Israel is ever pressed into a corner, they will obliterate quite a few places over there. Now, understanding this, Iran understands this. So if Hamas begins to give a heavy barrage against Israel, they already know what Israel is going to do.
Yeah.
And what that means is if they begin to do this, Iran's going to have no choice but to go all in. That's when the Hezbollah units will begin to activate out of.
Yeah, Vars, you're right on cue there. Remember Israel News Live played what he said about Israel yesterday? Because Israel News Live said it was they ignored the threat and stood everyone down. And this guy said that was fake news. Yeah, he's a Zionist.
Lebanon and other places like that. And they're going to go for broke. Now, keep in mind, if that happens to them, we, the USA, have to be neutralized. We have to be neutralized.
Whoa, now wait a minute. Neutralized? That's not good.
Yeah.
That's okay. By who? Who's going to neutralize us? The Russians?
Well, Iran has that capability.
Really?
China has that capability. North Korea has that capability. So if we get a bombardment at the same time, which probably will happen, nobody can go into Jerusalem and do what they want to do with the USA, still in power.
Right.
So we have to be effectively neutralized before that takes place. And it's just not a good situation over here because we don't have good accountability of who's here in this nation. We simply don't.
Let's talk about that.
You got millions that are poured over the border. They could do the exact same thing.
Part of this state of alert for America right now? There's a state of alert in America for every major
city.
It's
very real. It's real.
So you're saying part of the southern border, so this onslaught of military age men that have come across the border in the last 2 years, and before that maybe, is really a serious problem, a dangerous problem.
Yep.
Sure it is. Prior to that, there were sleeper cells they lost count of. Prior to that, there were Stuxnet's troops here in America they lost count of. They don't know where they went. There were lots of legal immigrations, but here's the problem with legal immigrations. Once you have an individual whose faith is of a specific type and they're loyal to that faith, should war break out, they're going to be faithful to their homeland, not the USA, which is a big issue. There have been countless petitions to get that altered, and a person becoming a citizen, that they would have to kind of assimilate into what we have, not us assimilating into some foreign mechanism. But that didn't happen, and so now effectively what you have are legal U.S. citizens who are loyal to the Middle East, right? So we could soon see for the first time Sunni and Shia Muslims together doing operations. What defense does anybody have against that? Because France is going to be out, Germany is going to be out. They're essentially overrun right now.
Yeah, they are.
So you have those countries are going to have to deal with quite a bit, which means what help will Israel have if this takes place? And they already know this. They already have that intel, right?
Yeah.
This is when people start messing with Israel, it truly is a doomsday issue for the entire globe, not
really
just for
is.
Israel. Yeah.
Because Jerusalem and Israel is such a key. I mean, this is the most important place in the world as far as all the nations are concerned, as far as God's concerned, as far as all the principalities are concerned. The control of Jerusalem is the control of the world. I mean, Jesus is going to set up a kingdom there 1,000 years. There's others. Lucifer would like to do it and beat him to it or take control. Am I right?
Yeah, he would. He's gonna have his time to set up his kingdom at some point. Fast forward, which is one of the unfortunate things. Yep. And the timing of when that actually happens, that's one of the questions in the air. But what we see happening now is how that can actually take place in a very short amount of time, right? How the initial steps can actually take place. That really will set the earth. That'll tilt the earth big time as far as a balance of power and everything else is concerned. So with this alert that we have in America right now, it's because they're unsure of the allegiance of citizens within this country.
Wow.
You don't know.
No, you don't.
To who.
No.
And you can't go by race. You can't do that. There was a recent, it was kind of like a survey, but they don't really ask people. They calculate things based on conversations and things of that nature. As far as people being loyal to the Islamic movement, you wouldn't believe that the numbers are incredibly high in America, right? Well, that means they're sympathetic to the Islamic movement, and they are indeed against Christianity when it comes to any type of if a war broke out, they would not be loyal to the Christian movement.
We're seeing that, aren't we? We're seeing that.
Yes.
I mean, already these demonstrations. And not just the demonstrations in the streets, but we got college students. We got Harvard, almost like and we got Congress, members of Congress who are just, it's unbelievable. There's Christians that all of a sudden jumped on the other side and are screaming and hating on Israel and hating on me and hating on everybody else. I mean, what's going on here? Are you saying that people's true colors really start to come out?
Well, of course, they're becoming, everything hidden is coming out to the front. But a lot of these people, they utilize Christianity as this, it's almost a comfort practice. Mm-hmm. That's it, right? So when it comes to, laying down your life for your faith, they're not going to do it. They're going to swap sides. And it really shows you how many people are potentially, just going to freely accept a mark or go to any other plan. They hate democracy. A lot of professors, a lot of people, they think that democracy is a failure. They do. They don't see a republic. They don't see that. They believe in an open world without borders. Now, this is something brand new. When universities put together a set of books that describe and do set up a world without borders, right?
Yep.
Keep in mind, this is the same way this nation got started. They're doing it again. And in fact, let's take it a step further. They already have the documents. They have an entire system set up, Pastor Paul, that you don't call this America. You call it something else. It is a global community, right? And the UN is called something else. But the books have
already been set up.
Been published. The computer systems have already been finished.
What?
The architecture has already been done. People have already been named and talked to about positions in this brand new
So
system.
it's a new shadow. So there's this hidden shadow government that's actually going to become the government, world government, and people have already been chosen for certain positions and ministers and kings.
Oh yeah, they have. And I know that's shocking, but you have people right now who absolutely know they're going to have a position in this new thing. Now, what does that tell us, though? That tells us we're not looking at way down the road. No, sorry, it's not going to happen that way.
No.
Because what they put together looks like implementation could take place in the next 6 months. So if they wanted to, they could do it in the next 2 months. Really, because some of these people are not young, but they've taken on a brand new position in a brand new system. Right, so there you are, right there. They're going to absolutely, and it's payroll. In other words, it is
the money's already set.
Everything is set up. Oh, it's set up. The assets, the gold, the silver, all these
computer systems,
the precious things are in there. They're ready. The networks, a new cabling that goes underneath the ocean, the brand new satellite and comm system, which is why they want people to switch to these titanium Apple phones, right, real quick. And they're not advertising what's inside. They're swapping everything over to AI right now, as we speak. Everything is going in with a new AI architecture right now.
Mike around the world's with us tonight, folks. Blowing my mind right now. But what you just said is they've laid the foundation. I kept thinking they're in the process of laying the foundation, but you're saying they've already laid the foundation. They've laid the tracks. The train is on the track, just waiting for the engineer to pull the trigger. So, okay, so now let's talk about Damascus here, and we'll come back to America, because Damascus, there's prophecy in Isaiah chapter 17. It says that, Damascus will be no longer a city, but will become a ruinous heap. Do you think we're on the verge of that scripture?
I do. It won't take too much. I mean, what? A couple more, hits, and that's the end of that city. Damascus is in bad shape. It's in really bad shape. Parts of Damascus would take at least 50 years to get back up and running again. So, for the most part, Damascus, the greater part of Damascus is a heap. It is a heap. It's a heap, and it will only take one small scrimmage to finish off the rest.
Do you see Israel doing this, or do you see America doing this, or who do you see?
I just see a conflict. I really do. I see a conflict, some air Saudis, and there's going to be a lot of missiles flying. Because once it starts, once a missile is launched, a pretty big missile is launched, and they already know it's going to do damage once they have launched detection. Right? They know what they can and cannot intercept. They know what's going to happen when it hits the ground. They're going to calculate what they have to do based on that. And at that point, they already know it's going to be large scale damage and casualties. Right? So from that point, everything escalates pretty fast.
So is this like a tactical nuke, kind of, or a mid-range nuke?
No, in fact, there are munitions that are not nuclear that can almost do as they do just the same damage as a nuclear weapon. There are brand new weapons out there that are based on a very different technology that are far more dangerous than nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapon is nuclear, yes, it leaves radiation, yes.
Yeah.
They probably will use those due to the amount in the Middle East. They probably will, but there's some other technologies out there that operate based on, well, I guess you could say resonance, which means they can shake apart the molecular structure of anything around it, right? Essentially causing things to melt.
That would have been how Jericho's walls fell. The sound of the trumpets would have destabilized the atoms. That's what I think.
Wow.
Causing atoms to, kind of just fall apart.
There you go. He just agreed with me.
And reassemble, or whatever the case is. So That wouldn't be bad. They have a weapon that affects all soft tissue, which means any living person in proximity of that explosion, all soft tissue is going to melt. So soft tissue would be any tissue that is
Flesh.
that is, well, it has liquid in it, high percentage of liquid, like your eyeballs or something like that.
Oh, that's nice. Your tongue and your
nasal
eyeballs.
cavities.
That's in the
your
Bible,
nasal
actually.
Cavities. Well, they have them. That weapon is real.
Okay,
Those are real
let
weapons.
me ask you a quick, wild question. But who's the most dangerous guy right now in the world? Right now, with all this stuff going on, who is the one guy right now that's absolutely?
I'm pained to say it. I'm pained to say it because it may not make sense. I'm pained to say it. I'm not going to say Putin. I'm not going to say Putin.
No.
Because a replacement is coming for a couple of people. So I can't use those.
Okay.
Some of the most dangerous folks are the ones we have not seen yet. The ones that we don't know yet.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
The ones who have not taken a position yet. Those are the most dangerous individuals.
So waiting
because they are. Yep, they're very cold, callous.
Oh, is that what scalar weapons are, Vas? They destabilize atoms. That makes a lot of sense.
Extremely cold and callous. So I would the players that we've been dealing with, they're more like they're kind of worn out, as you can see.
Yeah.
And when they start being replaced, everybody will have a better understanding. But then when the new people rise out, here's what I believe: when these new people come forward, I think that it's going to trigger something within people. They're going to know something eerie or
is
odd
it
about
because
these
they're going to be
individuals.
more aggressive? This is a new breed. This is another level of aggressiveness, murder, not afraid to annihilate or step on people, or ruthless. I mean,
Well, they're going to be bold.
Okay.
But I think that in general, people are going to have a different feel for them. You know how when you see some people that you see, you have a strange and odd feeling about these people, right? Sometimes you can't shake it. I think that's going to be quite strong with this new group coming forward. I really do. I think it's going to be very strong. I don't think anybody's going to make a mistake and think that they're just no ones, right?
All right.
But it's going to be quite different. These folks they operate under a different power altogether, but they're coming forward. I also believe that when they do come forward, things will be altered. Everything that's not altered will be altered by force.
By force.
By force.
Do you find it kind of strange if we don't have a Speaker of the House?
No, really.
I mean, but the timing of it. I mean,
it is. Well, yeah, that is odd, isn't it? I don't believe in coincidences. And these guys that are waiting in the wings and these operatives they're going to take full advantage of America's inability to make snap decisions.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They're testing this time. This incursion in the Middle East. This will test the resolve of NATO. It will test the resolve of America and Israel. It will test relationships. And believe me, these guys are constantly gathering information. What they did, they surprised everybody, right? Because what they did was they sat back and watched everybody and how they operate and what makes them move and what makes them stop. And evidently, they did their homework because when they moved, it caught people by surprise that they didn't know how to react. Right now, we potentially have a much worse situation here in America. That same thing that's happening in the Middle East, people may want to make sure that they're well acquainted with what's happening there, because if that happened over here, I do believe it's going to happen over here. When that takes place over here past Paul, that's not going to be a good thing.
Okay, so are you saying what we just saw in Israel, you think the same type of terroristic, murderous...
I do.
Yeah, they got the numbers across the border to pull it off. What, 3 or 4 million in the last 4 years?
Going to happen in the United States.
I do.
Yeah,
because the enemy's already here. They're embedded.
Yep.
I think the same.
They have high positions.
Are you worried about tomorrow? Is that a possibility tomorrow?
Well, this time around, right? I'm not too shaken.
Not yet. Okay.
Not too shaken. When we have activity over here in America, as far as, for example, you have CEOs, lots of them. you had people in high positions, people in key positions,
Yeah.
with everything in our communications box and power plant box, right? And life-giving infrastructure box with gas and oil and water and all those things. You have key personnel who own these facilities, right? They can act at any minute. You don't know who they really belong to. It's not, because it's not common for the government to snoop around any corporate entity. Everybody knows that if the government snoops around a corporate entity, then all those who snooped could just be wiped off the payroll, right?
Right.
The one thing they won't mess with is the corporate world. They won't do that. They've tried that, time and again. It does not work out well. So, in fact, the true power in this nation is with the corporations.
Okay.
It is with those who have the greater influence. And it just so happens you have a lot of foreign entities who have come over here and bought up everything.
Saudi Arabia. I mean, they're buying everything. I mean, Mohammed bin Salman and his family, the royal family, right?
Yeah, they own quite a bit. In fact, we can't survive without a relationship with Saudi Arabia, which means they have to be absolutely and totally removed also.
So they're like in the way, along with the United States.
Yes, they are.
From those who want to rule the world, I say, from
Yes,
Jerusalem. Wow. What about Elon Musk and the technology and the wealth and the controlling of the space and the conservation?
Well, I know what people would want, right? I know what they would want, but he is somewhat of a savant.
Yeah.
But he hates for the passion. He hates death and stuff like that.
Yeah, he don't like that. No.
He hates it. He's turned down more defense contracts than anybody who's ever existed. He's just taken penalty after penalty because he refuses to develop, certain weapons and things of that nature.
Yeah.
He's not the most engaging person in the world.
Right.
And he says a bit too much sometimes, but him, I really don't worry about him. There is another I do worry about.
Okay. Who's
there
that?
Is another. Well, that's a big-eyed guy.
Big-eyed
all right?
guy.
The other guy, the Facebook fella.
Oh, okay. You always pick up on that guy. I mean, so let's talk about Mr. Zuckerberg. I mean, he's got Facebook, yeah, and he's now moving into Meta, but he hasn't diversified as much.
Yeah, that's what people don't know.
Okay, okay.
They just don't know
this. What are you doing? What's he doing out there?
He by himself, right? He's not like anybody else. He by himself has the ability to move things forward in a very swift way. He has developed something as far as VR that if the average person hated him, they would still utilize VR for that reason, right? Mm-hmm. He's gonna be right in the front of communications here shortly.
Right.
He's also leading in this AI adventure, right? So a lot of people don't know that. They don't know that.
Yeah, he is really. He's actually. I mean, I know that there was this Sam Altman guy, and him and Musk, got Open AI started and all that. But Zuckerberg really has really never laid off the hammer, has he? He's kept his foot on the pedal the whole time.
He'd be more like an architect and a scientist behind AI. Musk and all these other guys, they assemble components basically, right?
Yeah.
But Zuckerberg is a bit different because he sees things in a very different way. For example, the way people watch movies, that's going to change in a couple of months. Just 2 months. It'll change
because of virtual reality. He's going to do something different with television.
Because of AI, right? Channels like CNN, ABC, and all that stuff, that's going to be dust. There will be customized programming, right? And it's already a fact that screens are going to be too slow because they found a way to directly interface, right, with your optics, which can pick up faster. In other words, you can watch a 2-hour news program in about 10 minutes and retain everything, right? With no implants, none of that stuff. And the way we used to watch it by television, that's going to be outdated. That's got to be outdated. They also have, and when I say customized, I mean this. Imagine your family goes, you're sitting down watching a movie, but your kids see one thing, you see a different thing, your wife sees something else, and whoever else, they see a different movie because all of it's been customized based on AI. You all see the same movie, but
You see
plots and parts and everything else is going to be different based upon your likes and dislikes.
So in
Right.
other words, let's say the family's sitting there watching a movie. It's the same movie with the same plot, but you may focus on certain things differently than someone else in the room. So whatever that area you're focusing on may become more
On the fly.
On the fly.
For example, like if a person does not like profanity, right?
Okay.
Without no profanity will be in the movie. If you don't like certain, if it irritates you to see certain types of things in movies, they just take it out. Now, what this will do is cause a brand new audience to start watching television. As a consequence of watching television, more and more people are going to begin to assimilate with ideas they never had before. This it's going to happen this way, Pastor Paul. In other words, every single Christian out there is going to find themselves highly unbelieving of why so many people are changing their ideologies so quickly. And I'll say it again. If you watch a movie and you like that movie is going to inspire something in you, right? It always happens this way. So imagine if the audience of that movie was everybody. And then the parts you like and the parts that you key in on, and we're talking about on the fly, right? So actors and actresses change. And just to shorten this, AI has already, it has the capability of writing a 2-3 hour movie in about 15 minutes. That's with the music, with the actors, with the dialogue and everything, and the orchestra, the scores. It can do that on the fly. And as you watch it, it can change it based upon your likes and dislikes.
Unbelievable.
So can you imagine entertainment period being this way? That means a person would fully engage. They would fully engage.
Yeah. If I don't like the way Clint Eastwood ended a movie, I just say, let me watch that again. I don't want Dirty Harry getting shot or Josie Wales or whatever the role he's playing. In other words, you can alter the
to be altered based on what you like and dislike. But they already know what you like and dislike in detail, right? Yeah. Since you've been using devices, a person, right, cannot breach your privacy in all ways, but a machine has all your data.
Yeah.
All of it. A machine knows what all of us like and dislike. So it's going to become a very different world.
How far are we away from this? I mean, this is going to be.
We're already there. We're already there. We're already there. We're not. It's done. It's finished. We're already there.
Do you have you seen these, Mike? I mean, I know you got certain kind of computers. I mean,
in fact, they have. Everybody's going to see it. I believe in about a little under a month. They're going to be little. I don't know what you call them, but
the trailers,
movie where you can actually customize, where it will actually customize based upon the person, right? Marketing and advertising, all this stuff. It's going to change. Everything will change. Everything is going to change. They can take a picture of you, right? The pictures that the average person has on Facebook. They only need 3 pictures.
He's saying within a month
to recreate you in AI. Now, what that means is, suppose you were having a meeting with someone, this will blow your mind, and you put your glasses on. You sit in a room, but you actually see the person in real time, and they see you in real time, and you're talking to each other, and it happens to everybody in the first 40 seconds or so, they forget it's VR. They totally forget it's VR. We're not talking about the big bulky headsets either.
I know. Something like almost like glasses like I'm wearing.
Yeah, they have something different with that. And it's because it's also immersed in reality, right? Because computers now with AI can track everything in your house so that what you see in your house becomes part of that computer projection.
Okay,
so everything is
let's see if I get this. Let's say there's 4 people sitting in a room. They all put these little glasses on. And all of a sudden, it's not just me looking at a virtual reality situation, but all 4 of us see the same thing. We're all in the same.
Yes.
No, that's.
So you hand a piece of paper to the other guy, right? If you want to, and he can see it, and it's very difficult. You can't even tell that you're in a VR environment. That's how spooky it is.
Whoa.
Yeah. And it tracks everything: eye twitches, hair movement, mouth movement, everything.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm starting to grasp this. I'm starting to understand how powerful that is and how dangerous that is.
How influential.
Oh, my Lord, have mercy.
That's going to consume people's time, right?
Yeah.
In the meanwhile, there are going to be certain elements that position everything in the world. And unfortunately, people are going to be so immersed in this stuff. And before they say they won't, they need to backtrack to the cell phone. Because when cell phones, before they turned totally digital, I remember conversations. And, I thought the same thing about cell. I said, people are going to they're not going to look up anymore after a while.
No, I know. They walk around like this.
They're not going to look up. Yeah. And they do. They look down. They're totally immersed in the technology they said would never have them. A lot of Christians, when cell phones came out, they didn't like the cell phones.
No.
They did not like them. But you don't hear, not one Christian is protesting a cell phone. You don't hear it. You used to hear it, but you don't now.
No.
And this is what I'm talking about. Technology is adaptive, and if it becomes part of our world, we just incorporate and keep moving, right? We kind of assimilate things and keep moving. Well, this is dangerous in the time we live in because people barely have the Word of God now, and there are subtle changes in the Word of God, right? And once you have that in a picture, right? Once you can start to rewrite what a person actually how they feel, because they do have machines. AI can tell if you're enthusiastic behind something, if you're being moved behind something, and it will begin to alter its content based upon how you feel about it. And yes, it can interpret your feelings. It knows exactly what you feel. It knows if you're genuine or not.
Yeah.
It knows if you're telling the truth or not. And so you can't get around it. It knows your intent. So think of a world that will be like that. Where's Christianity going to come into play? Because Christianity is totally against the flesh, and people have a hard time with that right now.
Right. So AI is already rewriting the Bible. AI is now delivering sermons like in some churches.
There are 3 Bibles out that are by AI, Pastor Paul, and people are finding it fascinating. Look for one of them. You can look for them now, I believe. There are 3 Bibles out there that have totally been rewritten by AI.
And people are fascinated by it, and they're going to read and see what it says.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
And so more and more we get drawn away from the truth.
Yep.
Let me ask you a question. Some of the couple things I didn't get to, and that was people are concerned about this weekend. Should churches, should mosques, and should temples be on alert this weekend?
Yeah. Yes, they should.
All 3?
Yes, they should. Yes, they should. Especially in because if you notice, this action in the Middle East was not to make a statement. Normally when you take hostages, you have demands, right?
Yeah.
Well, there have been really no demands. There have been people who have said, why don't you meet our demands? Come to find out they had nothing to do with the main purpose behind whatever they did. And so because there's no real motive to this, right? They are just brutalizing people. People ought to be, be very watchful.
So they have not requested anything.
No.
Other than if you come in here, if you make a ground move into here, we're going to kill these hostages and put it on television or online. That's all that's the only demand they've given us.
No negotiations.
No.
They tried to do the person swap thing. Twice it failed. 3 times it failed. And we have more over here than they had over there. In Israel, those guys were over there for years. They didn't do anything until they began to coordinate. Can you imagine being best friends with your next door neighbor? And then all of a sudden you find out that this guy belongs to something else. Pastor, that's absolutely going to happen here in this country.
So there's going to be hostages.
It's going to happen right
here in America. Country. People are going to start getting abducted and held hostage or killed and murdered by. They could if they activated every sleeper cell in the United States.
Oh my!
We'd have total chaos, and then we wouldn't know who our neighbor is. Because we don't know our neighbor anyway, and so we don't know are you good or bad. And everybody's got a gun, and so this could be absolutely chaos.
That's right. And that's what they would love to do that. If that ever happened here, and it will happen here, we would effectively be crippled. And at that time, they would go ahead and do what they have to do with Jerusalem. based upon their own faith and ideologies. Because we would be tied up. We'd be totally tied. If we can be tied up on politics to where we can't make military movements. I mean, a balloon flew over this country and people just looked at it.
Just stared
The government
at it.
said, what is that? Well, what do we do with that? Well, I don't know. Ask somebody else what they're going to do. They didn't know nobody knew what to do. The Republicans, the Democrats, nobody knew what to do. And it's all because of pride. Pastor Paul's pride. I tell you what, Republicans out there are really about to be disgusted now before anybody says anything. I don't placate to either party.
I know. Yeah,
but
I know.
if I would lean strongly towards conservatism.
Right.
Right. I'm not a liberal guy, but anyway, they're not going to be happy with what's coming up. They are not going to be happy, but they're going to have to deal with it. But at least they're going to know who they've been dealing with. See, that's one of the things is that this small season we're in, we get to see who we've been dealing with.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be pretty.
No.
It's just not going to be pretty. And but as a consequence of that, you know, in the Bible, there are prophetic things that must take place. They must take place. And we just so happen to live in a time where they will take place.
Amen.
Right?
Now,
and it's going to catch people off guard. It will.
Now, China's been very quiet in all of this. They're not condemning. They've been very quiet. Are they gearing up to make a move?
China made a statement about Taiwan, right?
Okay.
They're not going to give up that idea. They're not. China is expanding.
Yeah,
we might as well go ahead and face it. They are expanding big time. When they decide to expand anything in their way that legally shouldn't be there, they're going to remove it. And every day that goes by, they only become stronger, right? They don't have the internal turmoil. They try to make us believe by way of propaganda. Because if you go back to the COVID-19 days, you would think that China was totally done for. But we know that's not the case, right?
No.
They have more ships, as far as their Navy does, they have more ships than we do. They also have AI. They've had AI for some time now. And that is very troubling.
Wow.
That's very troubling. They have their own network, internet, and everything else. They have surpassed most countries in a lot of areas because they were hungry. It's almost like before anybody ever got their first apartment, they were hungry to get that apartment.
Right.
After a few apartments in a house, they're no longer hungry for an apartment or a house, so they're not working towards that. So they kind of can relax, right? Unfortunately, we're not really taught the discipline that relaxation can often lead to the grave, because if we don't stay hungry for something, our performance goes down. We're not as innovative. We start getting a little slow, slothful. Same thing happened in Israel in the Old Testament. They did the exact same thing, and we've done that same thing. We've gotten too comfortable. These other countries remained hungry, right? They are, think of it this way, they see us as the element holding them back. And they want to break free of that. The only way to do that is to overcome. Anybody who's stronger than they are is to become more wiser and stronger than the one holding them back. That's precisely what they have done. That's why nothing stays on the top of the ladder for long. Everything that's on the top must be a base. It must go down to the bottom. And America's been on the top for a long time. Let's go ahead and face it. As a whole, we have forgotten who our God is.
Oh, sure.
You don't even hear people. And it really gets you in government, because you don't hear anybody in government saying, none of us could have done this without Christ. You don't hear that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously.
They use that word God, but here's my deal with God. They could be talking about any God, right?
Yeah.
That's
blasphemous.
They don't talk about Christ.
No,
right?
they're
not talking about Christ. They're not depicting the God that I serve.
They're actually just saying God in a generic way, that way they can hide and not have to be and have to make it a bold pronouncing, to proclaim Christ. There's no two Jesus Christ. Okay, there's one. You can cloak everything under the term God, and so that's what's going on. I mean, it's
right.
That's why they hate Jesus. I mean, every time you see somebody start speaking Jesus on television or whatever, man, people are scrambling. Yeah, they're scrambling. They're trying to get them off the air. So yeah, it's coming down. So we're in a new world. This attack that happened in Israel and what's about to take place. This is a war. Would you say this isn't a conflict? We've moved into a war, and it looks like it's a regional war, and maybe even bigger. Would you say?
Yeah, I believe this is part of that. This will expand. I have high confidence this will expand. This happening right now opens the door. Everybody should pay attention to how these guys are working, right? Become familiar to their tactics, because we're going to have to deal with that here in America. They're going to have to deal with that in Germany fairly quickly. They're going to have to deal with that in the UK. But the difference is this: they fire rockets at Israel. They're going to blow up nuclear power plants in our neighborhoods. They're going to blow up nuclear power plants in the UK. They're going to do the same thing in Germany, to the best of their knowledge. Right now, there's a, you could call it a sub-alert on the power grid right now, right? There have been spots in the power grid that have already been hit, right? There are a few power stations down. The power companies have been working overtime to get things up, and they're thinking about, they're going to have to get Northcom or somebody to go in there and start to get some hard defense into these power stations, because if they continue to do this, they're going to wear down the system. They're also they're working on the telecom system. As people should have noticed in the last 3 days, there's been something happening with the internet service providers all throughout the USA. And so there are active hacks and active incursions taking place. I wouldn't be surprised by next week if another big company or some big operation is compromised. And of course, we are in those days. So it's coming.
Do you worry?
It's not going to pass us up. It's coming.
Okay. Now you mentioned nuclear power plants could actually start melting down because of sabotage by these sleepers. Do you worry about water systems being poisoned, and all of a sudden 2,000 people die in one city just because the water was poisoned overnight?
Absolutely. But especially these bigger cities, right? I have no doubt that people who live in these big cities in the near term are going to do everything they can to leave them. All of them.
Yeah, they want
every single last one. They're going to leave those cities in droves, because without warning, they're going to start losing buildings. The collapses and cave-ins and everything else. Pastor, there are a lot of operatives in this country. They are at work.
So through sabotage, you're saying buildings will start falling down, things will start collapsing. And so the sleeper cells are everywhere. So
yes, they are.
Breaking news, everybody. State of alert in America is not just a few demonstrations that may take place tomorrow. Maybe a few people get shot or killed or run over with a car, or all kinds of weird stuff could happen tomorrow. But that's not the real state alert of America. Is that right, Mike?
Right.
It's a whole lot bigger than that.
That's right. Yes, it is.
Could planes just start crashing, falling out of the sky?
I'll tell you what.
Bad maintenance.
Well, we have a couple of objects coming by, right?
Yes, we do.
Okay, this is the biggest doomsday message Mike has had. This is really looking grim, guys.
Yeah.
I think that one of them has some debris with it, which will it's a high probability we're going to see some atmospheric issues.
Okay, so let's say this binary. Okay, let's just say that Planet X is coming, bringing a few moons with it. One could be Nibiru, closer than the other. I'm just saying. Are you saying that it's going to start affecting air travel?
Well, it will.
Why?
The more this stuff comes in, right? Think of it this way.
Okay.
We have the ionosphere.
Okay.
The ionosphere is hot, but here's the problem. The particle density is just not there, right? So it's 5,000 degrees, but there's not enough density to carry the heat from particle to particle. As more particles come in, and that's about to be exponential, our atmosphere is going to heat up big time. It's going to cause and it will cause a red hue everywhere. So as it comes in, our atmosphere is going to capture all this heavy debris. It's going to it's going to get hot. It'll get hot. I know that people would just love for it to be normal, like it's going to be. It's not going to be normal. Things are going to change abruptly without warning. The winter's coming. We're going through some changes in the wintertime. I'm hoping that some of the particulates do not decide to settle during this winter, not this winter time, because that wouldn't be good.
Well, you called last summer. You told us in February it was going to be the hottest summer we've ever seen, and it was. So, are you saying that this is going to be some kind of weird winter, or maybe not? Or
yes, a very weird winter.
What? Hot, cold, windy, tornado.
Well, the shears. For example, suppose it's minus 21 day, right?
That's cold.
And the next day it's 74 degrees.
No way! No! I mean,
also,
okay,
the blizzard conditions like the wind. We're going to see some pretty high winds this winter, right? Now, for one thing, our ground cannot take the moisture anymore. I hope that everybody is aware of this. The ground is pulverized from all the moisture. The infrastructure cannot take the moisture.
He's been saying this for weeks, guys. The atmosphere is going to carry a lot of water, and you'll see a lot of floods, and hence all around the planet, the floods that are hitting the planet. He's spot on with this.
So if we start seeing, and we likely will, large amounts of snow, and suppose it gets hot, next day or day after, and all that, 5 feet of snow melts in one day. That's a huge flood, but it will refreeze back into the ground. And what happens is ice expands, right? When it gets into the ground, it's going to expand. And when it does that, it's going to rip apart pipes, just shred everything. Because they know for a fact, especially in Canada, that all the pipes and everything else are being shredded.
Wow, he's right.
Steel is cracking all over the planet for some reason underneath the ground. It's all over the planet is cracking. The saltwater intrusion continues, and that will further degrade of what's underneath the ground. Here in America, we have oil lines and gas lines and everything else. Pennsylvania is about to have a brand new problem, right? Ohio is about to have a brand new problem.
What kind of problem is that?
A gas problem. That'll be a underground gas and coal problem they're about to have.
Methane or something?
Natural gas and coal. Natural gas and coal. But you're not going to hear it. Nobody's going to find any information on any alarm, any warning, anything that you watch and see if it doesn't happen, and then everybody jumps and starts to react to it. That same thing will replicate itself across the USA, across Europe, and all these other places, because the temperature shears that we're having all over the planet, past fall, are costing us big time by way of the integrity of the ground itself. It is virtually tearing everything out.
Is that because of the magma rising to the crust? I mean, to the
that is a big factor, and also we have changing conditions in the entire solar system.
Okay.
The sun's light is altering, causing temperatures to fluctuate. Patterns are changing on the Earth. We will see a jet stream reversal. We will see magnetosphere is going to give us an example of what happens when some sort of destabilization event strikes. People will respond by way of their health to disruptions in the magnetosphere, right? So people are on edge now. They're going to totally lose it when this happens.
Yeah, because they won't know what in the world to do or how to manage it or how to protect it.
They'll be angry. They had an experiment one time where they took people underground. It was a university who did this. They took people underground. They had this human residence underground.
Okay, yep.
Everybody was normal. Past fall, they cut it off. In not more than an hour, you had some people throwing up. Some people had flu-type symptoms. Everybody was enraged. They couldn't control their anger. And then when they did that for an hour, they were trying to talk people down. They found it impossible. When they turned the human residence back on again, everybody was calm within 10 minutes. Within 10 minutes, they all recovered. So what do you think would happen if the frequencies, the natural...
Is that more scalar technology, Vast? Sounds like it.
Frequencies of the Earth were disrupted due to some damage in the magnetosphere. These are real consequences we're about to face.
Well, we might have the zombie apocalypse. I mean, everybody might just freak out on each other and violence and you know what I'm saying? Are you saying that why does it affect the brain? Is it the pressure?
Because we're born here on this earth, right? So then biologically, we're highly tuned to the environment itself. So every frequency that's in nature is also in us. right? Just like electricity, electrons, protons, and all these elements are within us. And so when they begin to alter, we begin to feel it. Magnetite in animals, once that's disrupted, they're going to go to brand new locations. And we should see that another, here again, by December, we should see animals behaving very strangely, oddly. Dogs and cats losing direction. That should have actually begun by now. Like, can you imagine dogs walking around with Alzheimer's? Like they can't remember where they were going. So a dog, so that would be a dog jumps up, he's about to run outside like he did 1,000 times, but this time he stops. He looks around, he didn't know where he is, right? He's just confused. And then he goes back inside, only to catch himself and then, kind of ask to go back outside again. We're gonna have issues like that because our biology and the human body is intimately tied to every single system in the earth. If it changes, we change.
Wow, makes sense.
Right now because this is such a dynamic discussion, but I have to ask this question: if and when the IDF make their move on the ground into Gaza, I just don't understand. I mean, this would be an urban nightmare. Okay, there's probably booby traps. There's probably snipers everywhere. I mean, wouldn't we have an absolute bloodbath? Is it even? Do you think they're even going to do this? Are they going to send in like 50,000 troops on the ground?
Well, the reason they would do that is to secure the people they're not talking about, right? If they didn't have the hostages they had, it'd be easy to do an air assault over there. Every strategic target they had. Unfortunately, they have an advanced tunnel system under the ground. All the while, they've been negotiating. Now, everybody should hear this. This entire time, they have been negotiating, right? To be apart, to be reassembled with Israel. All that time, they have built a network of underground tunnels, facilities underground specifically for war. They have all sorts of munitions and everything else lined down there. They have wired up the entire city, right, to respond to wartime situations. Why would you do that if you were trying to negotiate? Why would you build an underground network to fool and to grab people, right? Because some of these tunnels go right into Israel, and they're not even sure where all of them surface at, which is a big problem.
Yeah.
Because they know that certain people were taken, but they weren't taken from their front doors. They were taken from inside the house.
And they're taken right into a tunnel. Come out.
That's right.
Pull them right in.
That's right. So the soldiers will have to go and they're going to have to check, element by element to see what's there to clear areas, this, that, and the other. That's going to take a long time. In the meanwhile, we also know if they start doing this with overwhelming force, that, they have 250,000 high-tech missiles they have not launched yet.
Yeah, sitting over there in Lebanon to think that Hezbollah could fire down. Plus, won't the United Nations and the world start to turn on Israel if there's
already did.
Yeah.
They already did. They're going to get them in two ways. They're going to say, number one, that was irresponsible because you had hostages, and they're going to get killed if you start going in there, right?
Yep.
Number two, the world will never see. If Israel launched a BB gun over there, they would say, well, that's just too much.
That's true.
That's too much.
They're never going to.
No matter how many people die in Israel, they're going to say that's too much. And because the truth is, they are against Israel.
Yes.
All the countries of this earth are not standing with Israel. They're just reassuring the people that they're going to tolerate Israel. What they've been doing is tolerating it. They by no means stand by it.
No.
And that should be, they really, not even on paper, because they're handing over Jerusalem. That's an ongoing process to hand over Jerusalem into
Guys, I don't think he's right there. On Monday, the Sydney Opera House slid up its sails in the blue and white colours of Israel. So he's saying all the nations don't stand with Israel. I disagree. And Joe Biden's backed them. So I don't know why he's saying that.
Different powers come in and control it. But we know they're going to eventually take that by force.
42 months. The Gentiles will trample Jerusalem underfoot 42 months, 3.5 years. It's going to happen.
And you know what's
Wow.
troubling about that?
What's that?
That means America's got to be non-functional
Yeah.
for 42 months.
How close are we to that, Mike?
My. Well, past ball, as you know, they have, for example, the temple. They have rapid planning for the temple.
Yes, they
You
do.
know about the
I
temple.
know that.
They also have, there's a coalition of nations that have already agreed that if war broke out, they would go in and seize Israel, right? If a war broke out, they're going to do that. That's a primary objective. If a war breaks out for any reason, that's what they're going to do. So what if they did that and then allowed the building of the temple,
right,
under different authorities?
Yes.
Right. Now that would be an abomination. Now,
it would be, and that's kind of how I think it will end up being built.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, Jesus, Yeshua, has to come and put an end to that. But wow.
And then we're over here in America in bad shape. I don't think I think a set of natural disasters is going to happen. We will have a water event. That's coming.
Yeah.
That hasn't come yet. That's coming. And I hope that people are ready for that. Above all things, I hope they're ready for that. That will be devastating. By water.
Wow.
It's going to be devastating.
Wow. Mike, we're going to let you go, but before you do, I know we got this webinar tomorrow night. I did an interview with you. It was phenomenal. I'm still, my jaw dropped on the floor. Should people pay attention to what you had to say in this webinar?
Well, I hope so. I do hope so. I know, look, I know certain things are difficult to hear sometimes.
I know.
But when it happens, well, whoever heard it will be armed with what is truly taking place, because things have gone much further than what we suspected.
Yeah, and you explained that in your segment of this webinar, so I appreciate you doing that very freely and very powerfully, and it's caused me to do some serious praying on how in the world am I going to get the job done to get people to Christ before it's too late. It's a challenge. I appreciate you.
Well, Pastor Paul, God bless you. We'll keep persevering, brother.
We will. Thank you for coming on tonight, being with us and sharing. It's been really amazing. I appreciate it very, very much.
It's always an honor.
Okay,
Everybody
guys,
be
I'm
safe.
out
God
as
bless you,
well.
Pastor Paul. See you next
See you
time.
tomorrow, guys. God bless.
Mike around the world, folks. Wow, he dropped I don't know how many bombs tonight. And the thing is,